Okay, so for our very last speech, the keynote, we're gonna have a person that is probably the warmest and the nicest person I have ever met in my life. She's always smiling. She built an amazing community of Scrum Masters and Agile coaches here in Vienna. And it's pretty much impossible to get her into a fight. She's always so nice and she's obsessed with Agile. So today she's gonna kind of give you some of it by explaining how Agile is everywhere and how we can improve. Helen Lisowski.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm very nervous about this, I'm just telling you. Okay, so Agile is everywhere. This came about as a title because I was having a conversation with Evelina when we were first talking about it. So I went, that's great, I'll talk about that. Do you know, I have regretted that a couple of times. So, I'm going to talk about Agile is everywhere. It's a pretty grand claim, isn't it? What do I mean by Agile is everywhere? Because I obviously, all these things represent Agile. So XP, WAD, Scrum, Kanban, DSDM. I will shorthand that to just probably Kanban and Scrum because those are the two that come out of my mouth most. But these aren't everywhere, surely. If these were everywhere, we wouldn't need the training and certification industries that we've currently got living off this. If Agile Tree was everywhere and this was what Agile was, we wouldn't need those. Clearly, they exist. So, if that's not what I mean by Agile is everywhere, what do I mean? So I did a bit of brainstorming and I thought what I really want to do is come up with what the essence of all of those things truly is. And not just Scrum and Agile, Scrum and Kanban and DSDM and those, but what I wanted to do was look at the Six Sigma stuff, the Lean, the Toyota Production System stuff. They're all still under that great big Agile umbrella, and they all have some common things, some things in common. And for me, when I came and thought about it, these were the things that came out of my head. And I don't know if you can read those well enough. Continuous improvement, trusting the team, curiosity, short feedback loops, small pieces of work, and doing the most important thing first. But really quickly, and I don't know if you guys can see, there's something that's not quite right about that. And if I do this, it makes a little bit more sense. If you take small pieces of work, short feedback loops, and do the most important thing first, what you end up doing is pretty much you nail continuous improvement. That's the essence of continuous improvement. So when I'm talking about continuous improvement, it's kind of those things that I mean today. And if you couple that with trusting the team, this idea of empowering your team to do the things themselves, to make the decisions about the things that they know about. And the last one is curiosity, which is my favourite one. Okay, so these are the things that I'm going to be talking about today. So I thought, if I'm going to prove to you guys that Agile is everywhere, what I need to do is find a way of showing you that these things, these ways of thinking, these ways of working existed maybe before anybody had heard of Agile. So I had an idea, I thought, let's go back in time. Let's go back to the last century, pre-2000. Because about 2000, everybody was, the Agile world was starting to get a bit of traction and people had heard of it. And the problem was, I thought if I challenged myself to find Agile practices before it was ever heard of as Agile, this would be great. The problem is, if I only go back to pre-2000, immediately I bump into the Toyota Production System. And frankly, if you're going to cherry-pick data, why would you not choose the Toyota Production System? That's the essence, that's where all the Agile practices originally came from. We stole it. Sorry, I've had so much to drink and I'm still thirsty. So I decided that maybe going back just to the last century wasn't enough. So instead, I thought, why don't I go back 100 years? If I go back a whole century, surely, I can't cherry-pick data from that. Nobody had heard of software at that point, never mind Agile. So that was my challenge. And today, I'm going to tell you a couple of stories from history where I think I can demonstrate some Agile working practices before anybody heard of it. And then we'll move back up to the present day, and I'll talk a little bit about some other stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, Thomas Edison. Hopefully, everybody's heard of him. You probably already know where I'm going with this. So Thomas Edison, born in 1847, died in 1931, smack bang productive in the middle of our century ago, 100 years ago. He's famous for inventing the light bulb, which he didn't invent, but we'll talk about that again as well in a minute. He was a serial entrepreneur. He invented many, many things. He started 14 companies, and he invented the phonograph, the electric car battery, and the motion camera. And those were just a few of his inventions. And I've chosen those three as a way of demonstrating just how huge the intellect of this man was. Because to give you an idea, that's exactly the same as saying the guy founded Spotify, Tesla Motors, and Pixar today. So he was a huge mind as far as development of product was concerned. But it was manufacturing and invention stuff. So going back to Thomas Edison, he was famous for the light bulb, which he didn't invent. The light bulb had already been invented. What Thomas Edison did was take it and make it commercial. So he had two problems with the light bulb. The first was that it needed to be manufactured at a cheap price. And he thought he could probably get around that. He was pretty sure that he could make it more cheaply than it was being done. But the other problem was the bit that he really excelled at. The last one was that he needed to make it last for a reasonable amount of time. There is no point, no customer is going to buy a light bulb that only lasts 3 minutes. It's just not, there's no point, is there? So he needed to make it commercially viable. So what he did was he set out to test and find ways of improving that filament, that little bit that glows in a light bulb. And he tried copper, platinum, carbon, hundreds of different metals. He tried different thicknesses, different configurations. And eventually, in 1889, I'll just check because I don't want to say it wrong, yes, 1889, he finally got to a stage where he managed to make a light bulb last 13 and a half hours. Success, great. Now, so is that you? Okay, so he made this light bulb last 13 and a half hours. And the thing about this was that I could stop the story there, and I could say he put that into production, he sent it out to the shops, and that's absolutely true, that's what he did, or the equivalent in 1800s. But he didn't stop there, because he knew two things. First was that he wasn't finished, he felt he could do better, which is always a nice thing. For him, this was minimum viable product. And the other thing he knew was that the minute that hit the shelves, all the hard work of developing that could be picked up by his competitors, backwards engineered, and they would have stuff on the shelves before you knew it. So he kept working, and for me, this is the essence of what made him agile, was he kept working, and very shortly after, he managed to use, I think it was carbonized bamboo, I think it was, he managed to make a light bulb that lasted 1,200 hours. That was a massive improvement. So, in my mind, Thomas Edison was a developer. He took something, he made small incremental changes. He's very famous for the quote, I'm sure you all know, which is that the light bulb took 1,000 iterations. And it's often misquoted as 10,000. The quote that I have found was from a reporter who said to him, how did it feel to fail 1,000 times? Because that's what he was interested in. How do you keep picking yourself up after you fail? And Edison replied, I didn't fail 1,000 times. The light bulb was an invention that had 1,000 steps. And you can see, with all the different tiny iterations, different metals, different thicknesses, different configurations, you get to that 1,000 steps really, really quickly. So, that's my story of Thomas Edison in a really short nutshell. How have I done? Do you reckon he was kind of agile? Excellent, we can go to the bar. Oh no, okay. Probably one is not enough to prove agile credentials. So it's interesting to say that Thomas Edison wasn't actually particularly, he was great as a developer, but he wasn't particularly good at trusting the team. Thomas Edison was absolutely maniacal about making sure that his employees did exactly what they were told. He did not trust the team. And he used to work with a guy called Nikola Tesla. Have you heard of? So yeah, whether or not he invented the light bulb, I'm not going to argue. But he did say, Edison doesn't need to take so many steps. If you just listen to me, I can shorten the time that it takes to invent anything. And whether that's true or not, again, I don't know. But there was no room for Tesla to try that with Edison. Okay, so he wasn't the only one though. So I'm going to talk about somebody else now. Oh, I'm going backwards, that's why. That didn't look right. Charles Darwin. Everybody heard of Charles Darwin? Okay, just in case, Charles Darwin wrote a book called The Origin of Species. He was a little bit earlier than Edison, but he wrote and published Origin of Species against all the experts who were telling him that this wasn't right, and he really had a hard time with it. He started life trying to follow his father. His father was a doctor, got him into the best medical school in the world, and Darwin dropped out. I love that Darwin dropped out of med school. What he actually did was he wanted to follow his passions, which were geology and natural history. And he read an awful lot, and he was very influenced by what other people were writing about the continents drifting apart, and maybe land masses drifting apart. When he got the opportunity to go on a voyage around the New World, as it was then, on a ship called the Beagle, he seized that opportunity, and he went aboard as a geologist in his own right. He was, that's what he was good at. The thing about Darwin that made him amazing was that he took meticulous notes, and he questioned everything. And so when he was traveling, he was looking at the geology, and he was puzzled by the distribution of the land and the plants and the animals. And he thought, actually, if these guys were right about the continents drifting apart, and he could see this in the land, the way the land was formed, he could see evidence that supported that. He said, if that really happened, then that must have happened with plants and animals and birds. And he looked for evidence. And what he did was he collected samples which he preserved, and he took them back. Now, as I said, lots and lots of questions. What if? Why? Why not? This was what he lived and thrived on. When he returned, though, the difference between him and Edison here, when he returned, he had already written out to a whole load of experts and said, I'm coming back, I've got all these samples, I've got all these notes, I don't really know what I'm doing, but this looks really interesting. And so, of course, when he landed, all he got was all these experts going, give me your stuff. I want to look at this. So he gave them stuff. He said, catalogue it, investigate it. Do your work with, use the stuff, but tell me what it is you find out. So as a result of which, he basically built this pseudo team that allowed him to get fed back into what everybody else was thinking. Now, this was good because he miscatalogued all his samples. I mean, he was really shockingly bad compared to what you'd expect him to be. But he mislabeled so many of his samples that without that teamwork, he'd never ever have had the insights that he later had by thinking through and working out where these holes were in other people's theory. He'd never have developed his theory of evolution. So, I think Charles Darwin was a tester. I think that his honest, relentless pursuit of the truth, he hadn't got that ego of, at a time when everybody else was desperately protecting the work that they had, he was busy sharing his, and people were reciprocating, which was really great, so he must have been quite influential. His pursuit of the truth is what to me makes him a tester, because it wasn't about his ego, it was about getting to the honest truth about what was going on. So, that's two. I think that's two examples of agile working, or at least agile thinking. Does anybody have any questions in their head right now? You should be asking, what if? What if? Why not? What if agile is something unique to the industrial age? Maybe it is. That would be a really good question if that is one that's occurred to you. Why has Helen only shown us men of science? That's another really good question. I hope somebody's asking that. Why not go back much further? So I got a bit cocky here and I thought, you know what? I'm going to go back further. Because, maybe it is an industrial age thing. Maybe it's a thing to do with science, when science started coming along. The scientific method has a lot to do with that experimentation thing. So, if I'm going to prove that, in my mind, agile is just the way we are, and I intend to prove that by the end, we need to go back much further. And I got really cocky. I said, I'm going to go back 1,000 years. I'm going to go back 1,000 years and I'm going to find some agile thinking 1,000 years ago. Okay, it was a little bit tricky. But actually, when I started looking, I found 790 years ago a coincidence that I couldn't ignore. 790 years ago today, the 17th of September, she says, this guy, whose name I can't pronounce in Polish, I know him as St. Francis of Assisi, but Piotr, what is it? Yeah, yes. He died on the 17th of September, 1226. And I found this an amazing coincidence. I thought, actually, I've got to use this. This is just too much of a coincidence. And in fact, until 1969, today was one of his feast days, but apparently they got a bit upset because he had 2 feast days, and that's not normally happens, so they ditched one. Now, St. Francis, I'm not going to talk a huge amount about his life because it's very difficult to get fact from 780 years ago. So I will tell you some of the legends about him. And here's the thing. Where I said Edison was a developer and Darwin was a tester, amongst his many other gifts, I'd like to propose that St. Francis was in fact in possession of some Scrum Master tendencies. Okay? You know, I'm up here now, you can't get rid of me. Okay, so St. Francis, servant leadership is what we know as Scrum Master, and St. Francis was born into privilege. He was lucky enough to be born into a very rich family and lived the party lifestyle with all his friends, all his peers were living the party lifestyle. And he gave all that up for poverty and for service of the poor. And you know what? If they're, you know, for me that's servant leadership. You're offering a service to people who aren't able to necessarily provide that service for themselves. And the other thing that he's famous for is his love and respect for all things. So one of the legends about him is the fact that when he and his party went travelling, not his party, but his group of people he worked with, when they went travelling, he used to stop and ask them to wait while he went and preached to the birds and the wildlife. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know, but I do think this idea of respect is found throughout Agile working, and it's one of my most fundamental things when you're forming a team. Respect is the thing you need to protect. Respect for everybody is the thing you need to protect above all things. So, the other thing that he did was he, I think, solved the difficult problems. So he went about solving problems in a way that everybody won. Everybody got something out of the deal, and I think this is one of the key things that Scrum Masters do. They find a way, a solution where everybody gets what it is that they need. And there's an example, a factual example, and a legend. The factual example is about after the Crusades in the East, St. Francis was the only person that all sides trusted enough to negotiate the peace and to make sure that it held. And so for me, that's your factual example, but the legend's way better. The legend is what this picture represents. So this is a picture, it's a contemporary picture of today, so it's you can see that there's like needles and stuff. Not good, but it's on the side of a church in Philadelphia. And that's St. Francis, he's usually depicted with a bird on his shoulder or nearby. And it's the legend of this wolf. Now, the story has that he came to a village and the villagers came rushing out to him and said, "Can you please help us? Can you save us? There's a wolf that's been terrorizing us." And the wolf gets hungry, comes and snatches a villager, and he eats the villager. And, you know, we'd like this to stop. I think it's entirely reasonable. St. Francis apparently spoke to the wolf and said, "Do you know what? You can't keep doing this. So, here's a solution. If you agree not to eat the villagers," which the villagers were very keen happened, in return for which the villagers will feed the wolf so the wolf gets to eat. And the wolf obviously was very keen to eat something. So the legend has it that this solution held beautifully for the rest of time. Now, I don't think wolves live forever, so... But again, it's this negotiation between two parties. What I really like about that is he really enabled the team, just like a Scrum Master should. He went in, he helped them solve a problem that they had. They could have solved it themselves, but they were too close to the problem. Then he stepped back and he left the team to carry on. So long as they both kept up their side of the bargain, everything was great. So, How am I doing for time? 800 years ago. So Francis of Assisi, or whatever, Assisi. This was a quote from him, and I love this quote because this, start by doing what is necessary, then do what is possible, and suddenly you're doing the impossible. Now to me, that sounds like agile working. It sounds like agile software development, but I'm fairly sure it wasn't about that. Okay, so have I given you as 3? I mean 2's a coincidence, but 3's a pattern for all the testers here. Isn't that not right? I keep getting told that. I think that that's kind of nearly there. Okay, now I think that agile working is just what people do naturally. I think it's how they actually behave. And I think that as we grow, we unlearn this agile way of thinking, this solve the problem that we've got today. I think it's because of well-meaning leaders and teachers who want to help us to do what we're told, because it's far easier to teach us in school to do what we're told to do, rather than to creatively think. If you've ever had a conversation with somebody whose brain works in a different way to yours, it can be really frustrating when you know they're not hearing what you're saying. So you're saying things and they can't understand what you're saying. And you're the same, they're making no sense to you, and it can be really frustrating. But if you've got a class of 30 children, teaching that, each one of those to think individually can be really hard. So I think we are taught to be much more obedient, and this creative thinking thing is what we would naturally do. So this has always been the case. I think Darwin and Edison had the same problem. I've got some nice quotes here. Edison was told by his teacher he was too stupid to learn anything. And he was fired not just from his first job, but his second job as well, for being unproductive. And it wasn't just Edison. And luckily these guys didn't listen. They just carried on doing what they knew was right. Darwin was told by his father and his teachers that he was below the common standards of intellect. A way to kill a kid's spirit. So, I've just chosen 3 people out of history that appealed to me, and I knew that everybody, or I hoped everybody would know. But who else can you think of? I'm hoping that there's, in the back of your mind, you've got the startings of, there are thousands and thousands more. Probably not so well known, but they'll be well known to you in your sphere. So, we learn from history. That's absolutely true. We reflect and we retrospect. We know that it's valuable to look at what we've done and to take lessons and see how we can do something better. But continuous improvement is much more about the future. It's much more about what we do next, what we do today and tomorrow. So, if we've been agile for at least 100 years, I'm not going to say forever because I haven't proved that to you yet, but that's what I think. How come we have this agile tribes? We've all seen blogs and people on Twitter and LinkedIn telling you that there's one true way. Why is this? They'll say Scrum is the only way. If you're going to do agile in a big organisation, you have to use SAFe. Kanban or die, I think I said to somebody earlier today. But agile is not just doing Scrum. It's not just doing Kanban. It's about this thinking. We need to strive to be agile in our thinking processes. Oh, that's to remind me we're coming to the future. Sorry about that. Completely stolen from the internet. I don't even have permission to use it, okay? I'm just telling you that. No pictures. So, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about games and rules, because this idea of tribes being a destructive way of looking at agile working is really important to me. And games have been around since the dawn of time. Pretty much, we had 2 things to take care of. We had to be safe from the hungry beasts who were chasing us to eat us, and we needed to have full bellies from the food that we found. Once we'd done that, we developed games as a way of honing our skills. And so, when we start learning a new game, whatever it is now, we learn by saying, what's the point? How do I win? How do I get, how do I get to be successful at this game? How do I play? And we want to know what the rules are. And the rules are important for the game that we want to play, but the rules are different for the game that we're playing today than a different game. We have different rules for different games. And I think that Scrum and Kanban are just different versions of the same game. So it's an agile game with different rules. So, who has played Monopoly ever? Excellent. Okay, put your hands down. Now, who here has only ever played Monopoly using the exact rules? They've never added them, they've never taken them away, they've never tweaked them slightly? Has anybody ever played Monopoly like that? Awesome. You played it 3 times, I bet. One time, there you go. You learned the rules, played it, went, not again. Okay, you see this with families. You'll see every family has a different set of rules for Monopoly. What they do is they come together. You see 2 families come together. What rules do you play? Oh, well, we play it like this. And the other family listens carefully and goes, oh, okay, we play this. And then they negotiate. Sometimes they play one set of rules, sometimes they play another, sometimes they blend them. What never ever happens is that. Nobody says, no, those are not the rules, we play the rules. And the reason is that they've invented those rules, they've changed the rules because it makes the game more fun. It doesn't make you get to the end of Monopoly any faster. For anyone who's played with kids, believe me, if there are any rules out there, I'd like to know. What they do is they're interested in making it more entertaining, more fun. Now, if that makes it better, if more fun is more better, then that's fine. But it's not about getting it better. And I think playing Scrum, playing Kanban is exactly the same. I think you learn the rules, and once you've learned the rules, you go away and you use them to play that game. Play the game of Scrum or play the game of Kanban. Okay. Now, I'm a big fan of Scrum, so I don't want anybody to think that I'm not. Oh no, what am I doing? I don't want anybody to think that I'm not, because I am a big fan of Scrum. I think that everything has meaning in its context. So, Scrum is great if you're in a new environment where the team perhaps aren't used to agile working practices yet. And it's so good, it elegantly wraps up psychology, behavior, habits. If you've learned how to do Scrum, it'll stand you in really good stead with some really great habits for later on. But it's not the only way. Kanban is not the only way. Scrum is not even the best way. It's just one way. So, I want to talk a little bit about training courses. See, this is Veronica's teaching us to draw, you can tell. Now, I joked a bit about training and certification at the beginning, and I was a little unfair, because I actually think they really have a place and they're really important. But I think that training is about learning the rules of the game. That's why you do it. But the only way you get good is by playing the game over and over again. And you change the rules to make the game work for you so that you are successful. I mean, you can bet your bottom dollar that Edison and Darwin and St. Francis never went on an Agile training course, and yet they were perfectly capable of working in an Agile way. Problem I have with certification, though, is it gives you this big tick, this big pass. You've done. Who is certified? I am. Anyone certified in any Agile thing at all? Okay, the problem with has anybody ever heard of anybody not passing an Agile certification, by the way? Has somebody not passed? Can we talk about I really want to know. I've never heard of anybody not passing. And that's a problem, because if you get a tick that says, hey, you've passed, it can imply, even by accident to your subconscious, that you're done. Congratulations, you can now do Agile. They're like, and it's not about being done, because you're not finished. Okay. So, I'm going to use some quotes now. So this is Michael Jordan, who's lots of people quote him because he's very, very good at this way of thinking. And he said he's missed more than 9,000 shots in his career. He's lost 300 games. 26 times he's been trusted to take the winning shot and missed. He's failed over and over and over again. and that's why he's a success. That's why he succeeds. And the reason that this is so good as a quote is because he demonstrates brilliantly here the reason he's so good is not because he keeps failing, it's because he keeps treating success and failure equally as learning points. And it's really hard to do because your brain is hardwired to avoid fear, and it will avoid fear much more than it will go for joy. And to treat those two things equally takes a real discipline, and that's why this is a great quote from Michael Jordan. So, the whole point I'm trying to get across here, that formal training is not the only way to learn Agile. You can learn Agile, you can learn different frameworks, but it won't make you be Agile. And certification doesn't mean that you're done learning. So, I like Aristotle. Aristotle says it much better than Michael Jordan, in my opinion. Aristotle says, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. And this is possibly the quote I use most. I love this because habits is the thing that I'm really passionate about. So, I'm going to take this analogy a little bit further because I really care about it and it's really important to me. So we started in the depths of history, and now I want to talk about computer gaming. Because, you know, I can. So, the computer gaming industry started, I don't know, let's say 40, 50 years ago. Probably not that long, 40 years ago. The guys writing computer games didn't have any interest in psychology at all. They set out to solve a problem. They set out to solve the problem of the fact that their games were getting more and more complicated, and they needed to get their players, their customers, to keep buying the games. If they didn't buy the games, they didn't make any sales, and frankly, that's a really bad business model. So they needed to find a way of getting the customers, their players, to learn how to play the game quickly. So this was the question they set themselves. How can we get our customers to learn quickly and improve quickly? So the gaming industry solved it magnificently. They found that if they taught people during the game how to play, they could get a little tiny bit better each time. But they still had this big problem of how to get them from 0 to 1. How do you get them off the ground? And they solved it so magnificently that every industry pretty much now has, software is pervasive in all our lives, but every industry that has any kind of interaction with humans wants to engage humans better. So the work that the gaming industry did back then it developed into this whole gamification idea. So gamification is a thing, I know, I loved it. So gamification now is, the idea is that people study gamification. So social scientists do experiments in it. New West Media have got a gamification plugin which presumably lets our agents fight to the death. Or is that Halo? I'm not kind of sure. So, gamification is a thing. So when you start, that training thing, that 0 to 1 bit, is about getting us off the ground. It's about learning how to go backwards, forwards, left, right, and pick up the weapon. The weapon is usually only allowed one, and it's pretty rubbish. But that, to me, is what training is about. That's what Agile training is about. It's about getting you to the point where you can then go and play the game and learn and get better. And every time you get better, you get a new piece of armor, or a new spell, a new whatever. But when we start out in a game, what we end up doing is we start out weak and our opponents are weak. What we do is we have to fight weak opponents to get better. And what we do is we get more experience and more tools as a result. So there's my opponent. Fierce. And I think this is just the same for a newly minted Agile practitioner, whatever your discipline is. If you go on a course and then you get dropped into an Agile team, you recognise the landscape, you know how to go forwards, backwards, left and right, it's great. What you don't do is have all the experience points. You have to play the game over and over and over again to get all those experience points to get yourself to level up. And what you do, you get to level 99 and get pretty badass. So, you get all the weapons, all the armour, whatever it is. And as you get higher up, your opponents have got harder, you've been solving harder and harder problems. But it's been so incremental you haven't really noticed. What happens is you get to level 99 and you look back at level 2 and you go, oh my god, that's so easy. How could I ever have been so stupid as to find that difficult? And this is the really important thing, is that you're not stupid at all. What you now have is a whole load more of tool sets to use. You've got a whole load more experience to bring to bear on the problems. So your problems, your opponents have got more fierce. I think I probably got like, there we go, laser dog. I had a bit of help with some of these slides. I'm not sure that they were really helping. But keeping playing is how we got good. And that's the most important thing that I want you to take away. Now I've seen bloggers and people on social media telling you that there is one true way. This is their special little snowflakes, that's what that means. There is one true way, that Agile is the only way, their version of Agile. So whether it's Scrum, whether it's DSDM, whatever it is, whether it's certain versions of whatever. The thing is, I'm sorry, I do apologise, I've lost my place just a second. Right. So these people who are telling you that this is the way that you should do Agile, and if you're not doing it like this, you're wrong. Agile is a journey, and it's a journey that never ends. So wherever you are on that journey, it's like playing that computer game. So you're either at level 2 or level 3 or level 4, but you're all playing your own unique computer game. Your team is unique. Your team is different today than it was yesterday because your team have learned some things. Your business context is different today than it was yesterday because the business needs have changed. So it's really important that you know that you're solving the problems for today and you're solving your problems, your own problems, not somebody else's. Anyone who tells you that you're doing it wrong, it's not helpful. Maybe giving you some advice, giving you some helpful experience or some of their tool set to use, that's great. But there is no wrong. Has everybody heard this phrase, all roads lead to Rome? Or is it an English phrase? To me, all frameworks lead to Agile. They're all good in their own domains. So Scrum, as I said, is great if you've got a new Agile team or you're wanting to learn Agile practices. But Kanban is great if your domain, your context changes all the time. If you've got new work coming in, you're working on a help desk or whatever, you need something that's going to be much more flexible than solid iterations. If you can't run, I mean, I don't think Scrum as a weekly is about as often as you want to run a Scrum iteration, but Kanban allows you to change that. And people like labels. So when we use labels like Scrum and Kanban and DSDM or whatever, that's so that we can gather together a set of ideas that we can talk about so that we are talking about pretty much the same thing. We kind of understand the same things. And it doesn't mean that we necessarily understand completely the same thing, but it's a label, it's a shorthand. And that's why we have these labels of these frameworks. But what I want you to do is learn how the rules contribute to the game and then keep playing the game. So I'm going to skip that because I know we've got time. So my challenge today to you all is to go and be Agile. Don't do Agile according to somebody's rules. Go and be Agile. Use your brain. Think about how you can make things better. Learn the rules like St. Francis and then break them because that's the right thing to do, if it's the right thing to do. Go and be curious like Darwin. Go and ask questions. Be annoying. Go and say, why is this the case? Have we ever had a new person join a team? And they go, why do you do that? And everyone looks around and goes like, I don't know really. Actually, we just do. What you want is to try and look at things with fresh eyes. Experiment like Edison. Methodically try and do tiny, tiny things to make you a little bit better tomorrow than you were yesterday. And that's the only aim. So, I think Agile is who we are. I think it's how we think. I think it's what drove our ancestors down from the trees, not to Darwin there. I think it's what helped us develop fire and the wheel. I mean, how curious is the word, how curious must Alexander Fleming have been to think that feeding mould to sick people might make them better? And yet without that kind of curiosity, without the experimentation that he did, we wouldn't be living in an age of antibiotics that we are today. So, you don't have to have even heard of Agile to be Agile, is my point. So I'm going to finish today with this lady, Maria Skłodowska, hallelujah, more famously known as Marie Curie. And the reason that I'm finishing with her is because firstly, she's a woman, and this presentation really lacked diversity, to be fair. And not only that, she's a woman who had, the only person, I believe, to have won 2 Nobel Prizes, and not only that, but at a time when women weren't supposed to do anything exciting at all. And her quote, I really like. You cannot hope to build a better world without improving the individuals. To that end, each of us must work for his own improvement, and at the same time share a general responsibility for all humanity, our particular duty being to aid those to whom we think we can be most useful. In essence, let's go make the world just a little bit better. Thank you very much.